Hey, I have a second channel. Cube Comp MTDX.
Hey everybody, so we're back again with this FSP power supply. It's a model FSP 300-60 THA parentheses 1. Get you a look there at the specification label. So I have two of these units, and this one here, this is the one that sounded like a cicada when it had no load on it, and would actually whistle and whine when you had some load on it. I recapped I changed out 6 capacitors in this unit, and that quietened it down, but the 3.3 and 5 volt rails, they just weren't doing so hot. And because this unit, I believe, being group regulated, it was causing the 12 volt rail to do some weird stuff. Even though the 12 volt rail was among the cleaner running rails, with no load connected, the 12 volt rail is putting out like 12.8 volts, and then you attached like one hard disk drive, and the 12 volt rail would actually increase to like 13.4 or 13.8 volts, which is way out of ATX spec. And you would attach a second hard drive, then it would level back off to about 11.8 or 12.2, something like that. And the 3.3 volt rail in particular was still a little bit more noisy. I believe the noise was out of the ATX spec for noise. So I think what could be going on is some of the caps I put in this unit, particularly these right here, these are Rubicon YXG series 10 volt 3300 microfarad capacitors. These I don't think are getting along too well with some power supplies, because I used a couple of these when I recapped the Bestech ATX 312E unit that ended up going into the Porta-Cube system, and that PSU with no load connected, all the voltages were stable, but the power good signal was intermittent. It would sometimes be like 3 volts, 4 volts, 5 volts, 0 volts. The power good just was not, it just wasn't happy. But when you connected just one hard disk drive, the power good signal was a solid 5 volts. That unit's been running that system just fine. I never actually had any issues with it running the system, actually. It was just after I had recapped it, I'd used a couple of these caps in it, and I noticed that behavior. But with this unit, see, when I read online the Bestech power supplies, they tend to be very forgiving about what kind of caps you throw in them. They'll take general purpose caps, no problem, apparently. But maybe these FSP power supplies, they might be a bit more finicky about the capacitors that are in them. So why I don't have any brand new capacitors to put in it, aside from those I just showed you in the bag, I do have these Panasonic Matsushita 3300 microfarad 6.3 volt caps off of motherboard. I'm going to try in this unit. See if it behaves itself with these. Now, see, the thing is, these are existing used caps, but I mean, they're low ESR caps for motherboard, at least for motherboard grade, and those, we'll see how they do. We'll just have to throw them in there and see how they do. So what I ended up doing is I ended up putting in an order with Mauser for some of these particular grade capacitors, and also some 3300 microfarad 16 volt caps and some other various grades of caps I need to get. With Mauser, it's better to kind of bundle things together. That way you save a little bit on shipping, because they kind of charge sort of a flat rate on shipping. That being said, we're going to take this power supply back out, and we're going to change out those 3 caps, and we'll see how it does. So one thing I do want to mention about working in power supplies, you definitely want to use caution doing this because these things can hold some charge in them. Now, generally, these capacitors, the big primary caps, will discharge on their own. I've actually pulled power supplies out of service and recapped them within an hour of shutting them off. I generally like to wait longer, but I mean, just to show you, I'll get my meter over here. We'll check across the caps here. I'm sure there'll be hardly anything on them. Yeah, hardly anything. Like 1 millivolt. It's, yeah, not much. But there have been times, not with computer PSUs, but I did recap a monitor years back, and the unit had been, the PSU had been unplugged for quite some time, the one that's in the monitor, and it still had some voltage on it, so I had to use a big resistor to drain that capacitor to make it safe to work in. So I'd always suggest working on these things if you know what you're doing, if you're familiar with what you're doing. So I've actually been doing miscellaneous repairs on power supplies for several years now. Mainly capacitors. That's probably the most common thing. That's probably the most common repair that power supplies will have to have done is capacitors. So they're going to remove these capacitors, the big guys I put in there, and we're going to change them out for those motherboard grade caps. Hopefully we get this done before it rains, that way I can back porch test it. I know it's kind of hard to see what I'm doing. I'm just, with stuff like this, I kind of want to really make sure I watch what I'm doing. Amazing. Of course, I may have to sacrifice a little bit on video quality, but I will say this time the capacitors are coming out easier. And that's because there's two reasons. One reason is glue. There's no glue on these caps because, well, the original ones were pulled out and they had glue on them, holding them in place. And also this time, the solder I put in here, or at least the solder I used to install the replacement caps is actually traditional leaded solder. And this stuff, it heats up and responds very well to the soldering iron. I'm gonna be honest. Over the years, I mean, I've seen so many people talk about Fortron Source Partners as like the gold standard of power supplies. I'm not gonna say they're the gold standard. They're not terrible either. I mean, but I am gonna say that I've seen better build qualities from OEM suppliers like Hypro, even Bestech. This unit uses a half bridge topology, which is rather dated. Yet other units from like Hypro and Bestech, a lot of them I think were using single transistor Ford, and were actually quite efficient. So I'm just trying to find the leads here. It's like a game of cat and mouse. Look, I'm tracking down the leads for these caps. It can be quite challenging. I think I've located the one I need. Sometimes these capacitors are put in really tight spots and you're really just having to walk them out little at a time, going back and forth between leg and leg. Okay, so all three of the capacitors were out. Now it's got to go back and try to clean up the. Matter of fact, I was going to manually clean out the holes, but with these caps, with the leads already being kind of short, I'm just going to walk them back into place one by one. Since the solder that's there is already pretty fresh. I mean, it was installed, what, 4 days ago, something like that. Just gotta make sure I line up the polarity. Of course, my flashlight is not in here. Okay, that one's in. Let's go ahead and do the next one. Okay, let's put this last one in there. This one should be a little easier. Okay, so now I gotta add some solder to a couple of different leads, or 3 leads total. Okay, we are done with the soldering part. So the replacement caps are in. So these big caps here, these were actually given to me. One of my colleagues, he was at a ham radio fest or something like that, and I think is where he bought these. So again, these are Rubicon YXG series. The capacitors the other caps that I have are Rubicon PX, and they've been working fabulous in power supply recaps. These are some of the ones I had purchased off of Mauser back in, I think, 2020. Ordered a whole bunch of capacitors. In fact, I think I spent upwards of $60 to $80 total, because I purchased, I think, big lots of like 100 of several different grades. So I think we're good here. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. Look at the bottom of this power supply. The soldering work does not look all that much better than some cheap end units I've worked on. I mean, I got this Delta PSU board here, and compare them side by side. I'm going to say the Delta looks a little cleaner in design and everything. It's just me, but I don't think I have a Bastec laying around out of the case at the moment. But I mean, that Delta is an example. So I'm going to go ahead and stick this back in. Make sure we ain't got any loose solder in the bottom of this case. We don't want that at all. Now Now there could be the possibility that there could be a possibility that some of the other caps could be having issues, like the little ones. I don't know for sure, but get this flipped around here. I think that's the way it originally was. One thing I do like about the FSP units is they have standalone fan speed control modules. A little separate PCB that gets 12 volts off the power supply and runs through a thermistor, or uses a thermistor to control the speed of the fan. The coolest part about it is, let's say I have a bad FSP unit, I can salvage the little PCB there out of it, and I could stick it in some other cheap end supply I'm beefing up to give it fan speed control. Or you could use one of these to control case fans. Okay, so it's back together, so now it's time to back porch test it. Okay, so the power supply is plugged in. Don't have mains power going to it just yet, but I'm getting ready to switch it on, and let's see how everything goes. Unit is running. So far, no magic smoke. Alright, let's go have a listen. Yeah, have a listen. Sounds nice and quiet. But we'll have to bring it back in and check voltages and all that good stuff and make sure everything is working like it needs to before I even think about putting this back into a PC. Okay, so we're back inside, and now we'll go ahead and plug this back into mains. The green to black is already jumpered, so it's going to come right back on its own. I do still hear some noise, but we'll have to see how it behaves when we attach some load. Okay, so what I'm going to do is try to meter the voltages on this thing, at least the 12 volt. We'll see what happens to it when we connect one hard drive. I think it's going to be doing almost exactly the same as before. So 12.76. This thing's definitely not happy. So I'm going to connect a hard drive and let's see what happens. And we're sitting at 13.1. Yeah, the thing is definitely not doing good regulation of the 12 volt rail. Yeah, 13.4 is where it actually peaked out at. As we can see, changing out the caps, well, replacing the caps altogether, at least those 6, got rid of the vast majority of the noise this thing was making. I mean, at first this thing sounded like a cicada, making all sorts of noise. But now it just seems like it has a bit of a voltage regulation problem. So if I switch over to the 5 volt rail, let's see here. Now the 5 volt rail is low. May have been that way last time. The 3.3 volt rail is hanging pretty solid. It's not really budging much at all. But the fan, the cooling fan, as you can hear, ramps up for a brief moment, and that's due to the surges coming in on the 12 volt rail. Because I believe the way that this little fan speed control works, there's a capacitor that has to charge up and things will level out. So that's why when you turn this thing on, it initially is high, or at least the fan speed is high. Okay, so there's no load. This particular drive here has, I think, 3 platters in it, so it takes a good bit more energy to pick up. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the 5 volt rail. We'll do this again. So 4.5 was where we dropped down to. Now we're sitting at a solid 5. And if I add this other hard drive into the mix, now we're getting a pretty solid 5. Whereas with just the little 40 gig drive plugged in, which does not seem to take nearly as much load, you can see we're sitting at 4.64. This thing is just all over the place. Okay, I figured I would also include a clip of the power good signal on this unit, which is the gray wire. It's a logic signal, so typically around 5 volts is high, around 0 volts is low. The power good has to be high for the PC to post. So I'm going to jump the PS on leads and we'll see if power good comes up. Power good is high. So let's grab the smaller of the 2 hard drives and let's connect it and see what happens to power good. it's still close to 5 volts. As I mentioned, I think once you have some additional load on it, it would probably level out better. So tell me what you think. The way I see it, I don't really think I should be running this in a computer when it's behaving like this, but then again, the computer is going to have a bit more load on it at all times, so it probably would work okay. What I may do is I may throw together some older hardware I don't really care about, or just something sacrificial, throw this thing in there and see how it behaves with the connected load of a PC. So anyways, that is another video on this FSP power supply. See, I haven't even gotten around to work on the second one yet. You know, if I can get it running, I could see how it performs alongside this one with similar load testing. So anyways, hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.
Well everybody, that wraps it up for this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like the video. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the computer channel, and be sure to tick that bell so you'll get notified when new videos are posted. Also, don't forget I have a whole lot of other interesting videos here on the channel to check out. And also, in addition, I have a second channel, CubeComp MTDX, where I have all sorts of other videos not exactly related to technology. Links to the channels are available at the end of this video. Again, I thank you for your support and thanks for watching this video.